Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special night for you. We will be speaking shortly with the Honorable John Hostettler, sixth-term Congressman from the state of Indiana. He's a Republican, and he was there in 2001, 2002, 2003. He was there for 12 years. And he was there when the decision to attack Iraq was taken. Now, he did not vote for the war on Iraq, and he paid dearly for it. He wrote a book. The name of his book is Nothing for the Nation, Who Got What Out of Iraq. This is the first time, ladies and gentlemen, we see a congressman speaking this way. You will see. Don't miss this interview, because it will be an excellent, excellent interview with the congressman. And he says it like it is, ladies and gentlemen. He names the names of those people who were in the administration that made us go to war against Iraq. This is not just anybody saying this. This is a United States congressman who's saying these things, and we will tell you what those things are very shortly. Even though I promised myself not to go through any news items or anything, but I could not help when I saw this about Caleb Campbell. Some of you may not know who he is, but he is a first draft pick from the Army to join the Lions, to join the NFL. Well, today the Army changed their decision, which I did not even know that the Army had special status for people, for men or women who are in pro sports. But the Army revised their earlier decision and recalled Caleb Campbell to go to Iraq. Now, one thing, what really got my attention, and this is how they program you. We always, anytime we see something where they go directly into your subconscious, we bring it to you and we bring it out so you can learn how to read news and learn how to, with all these polls that you see. Now, on that story with Caleb Campbell, one of the polls said, AOL, Time Warner, it said, do you agree with the Army's ruling on Caleb Campbell? 56% said yes, and 44% said no. Now, the other poll, what would be the higher priority for you? What would be the higher priority for you? Serving your country or playing pro sports? 69% said serving your country. But I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, if they would have asked the question in a different way, what would be higher priority for you, serving in Iraq or playing pro football? I guarantee you it will be a totally different story and totally different answers. But when you put it like that, who in the world is going to say, no, pro football is better than serving my country? Of course, it's going to be a higher percentage of people saying serving your country. But I wonder how many of our soldiers in Iraq actually feel that they are serving the best interest of the United States. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we told you earlier, that our guest for tonight is the Honorable John Hostettler. He is a sixth-term congressman from the state of Indiana. Wrote a book recently, the title of that book, and I encourage everyone listening to us to get you a copy of this book, because what he wrote in this book you will not see on the nightly news. The name of his book is Nothing for the Nation, Who Got What Out of Iraq. Reveals why political leaders and their subordinates sought to remove Saddam Hussein from power. It reveals why the decision was taken to remove Saddam Hussein from power. Nothing for the Nation reminds us that when it comes to relations between rival nations and rival national leaders, America's founders were wise to give us a republic and not a monarchy. The sages who secured for us the blessings of liberty should not have been surprised by the true motivation of those who sold America on the idea of ousting the butcher of Baghdad. Very interesting. The motivation, the true motivation of those who decided to go to war against Iran to remove Saddam. This is coming from a congressman, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely important, and we need to pay attention and listen to every word that the congressman is going to say. Congressman, welcome to the program. Do we have... can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, great.
Can you hear me, Dr. Tillawi?
Yes, sir. Welcome, and I'm glad you were able to join us. Now, let's go ahead and get started with this. You know, a United States congressman coming out and saying that our leaders very much misled us into going to this war, and you, by the way, voted against this war. Now, tell us, why did we go to war against Iraq?
Well, Dr. Tillawi, we were, as a member of the House of Representatives in that time, I was also a member of the Armed Services Committee. And as a result of those two obligations, I was able to be in on several dozens, actually, of hearings and briefings, both in a classified setting and an open setting, to hear the intelligence that was available to the United States regarding Saddam Hussein and the threat that he posed to the United States. That intelligence that we received was essentially, to a great extent, raw intelligence that was available to members of Congress. You've probably heard a lot about faulty intelligence and members of Congress being lied to. Well, it was my experience that did not happen, and you have to understand the nature of intelligence and the nature of information that's available to members of Congress. Intelligence in its own right is not just substance. It's not just topical. It also has very much to do with the means by which you come by that intelligence. And as a result of that, members of Congress were asking and should have been asking a lot of questions regarding the intelligence. So, for example, as members of Congress heard that the United States intelligence community has received this intelligence from this source, I asked questions such as, what are our intelligence assets telling us? Where are the weapons of mass destruction? I was asking questions that would take the intelligence in a more conclusional direction, meaning you can't just take what someone tells you and even tells the intelligence community of the United States and move on that from there, especially when you're talking about issues of war. And so as I sat through briefing after briefing, hearing after hearing, I concluded that the idea that Saddam Hussein was in charge of some program of weapons of mass destruction, I came to the conclusion that that was not the case. With
now,
the intelligence that was...
Congressman, let me ask you this. Do you have, I mean, as a member of Congress, do you have the same intelligence sources that the President has?
Well, that's an excellent question, Dr. Tillawi, and I address that in my book. And without giving out too much of the book in this particular area, I can tell you this, that it is not the case that members of Congress are told more or less than the President is told, simply because the United States Congress created every single intelligence agency and program in the federal government. And so it is not advantageous to the intelligence community to withhold or to add to the intelligence that is available to the President in their delivery of it to Congress. We hear what we need to hear, and we don't hear any more or any less.
So the intelligence that you had, every member of Congress received, or supposedly have received. Now, how could you misread or misread that intelligence? Because there's only not even a handful of congressmen who voted against the war, or at least so that the intelligence they had is not good enough to take the war, to take the country into war. Did you misread that intelligence, or you did not receive the right intelligence?
Well, on the floor of the House of Representatives on October 8th, 2 days before the Iraq resolution, I stated on the record, it's a part of the congressional record, that the evidence for a program of weapons of mass destruction was tenuous at best. And I admonished my colleagues to vote against the Iraq War resolution, and I voted against the Iraq War resolution. And I need to remind you, Dr. Tillawi, I am a Republican, and only 6 Republicans in the House of Representatives voted against the Iraq War resolution.
Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why, since you know the intelligence was there, that we should not go to this war? Can you tell me why all these Republicans and Democrats voted for the war?
Well, it's my belief, Dr. Tillawi, that there were a number of reasons. The most crucial of which was the pressure by their constituents. In September of 2002, less than a month before the vote, the Pew Research Group issued the results of a poll, a survey that found that 64% of Americans believed that Saddam Hussein should be removed from power militarily. Almost two-thirds of Americans believed that the military should remove Saddam Hussein from power. I can tell you that when two-thirds of your constituents want to do a thing, then the vast majority of members of Congress will vote that way.
Okay, now let's stop right here and bring up the question, bring the media in, because these constituents, they did not come up with that opinion on their own. They were very much drilled to have that opinion. Now, as a representative of the people, did you know that the media was an accomplice in this case, giving the American people the false information of exactly what was going on? Did you think about that?
Oh, very much so. After I voted against the Iraq War resolution, I can tell you that my constituents agreed much more with the media's take and the President's take on the situation in Iraq than they did my position. Simply because, as, for example, Wolf Blitzer interviewed, at that time, National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, and she spoke about the specter of a mushroom cloud over a major metropolitan area if we should allow Saddam Hussein to continue with the program of weapons of mass destruction. These ideals put visions, the pictures in Americans' mind, including my own constituents, that there was a real danger that Saddam Hussein's program of weapons of mass destruction was going to lead to an attack on the United States. The only problem was, for me, is that the intelligence that I received did not make a compelling case whatsoever.
Which is the same intelligence, that the President has, and the same intelligence that members of Congress and Senate has.
Exactly.
Okay, now,
not
let me ask you, why is it that the people we have elected to represent us and protect us, they did not protect us when they knew deep down inside that the media was given wrong information? Why Congress did not, isn't that, I mean, I don't know, is that a responsibility for Congress to protect the people from the lies of the media? Or why you guys did not protect us from the media?
Well, I can tell you that, and your guests have probably talked about the difference between a democracy and a republic. But in a democracy, Dr. Tillawi, when 64% of the constituents want to do something, most politicians will do that thing.
But the people did not know, and you knew as a member of Congress, you knew that the people are of that opinion because the media made them that way, and the media was an accomplice. My question is, why? I understand what you're saying, that a member of Congress is going to go with what his constituencies want him to do, but the people were lied to. Why these people did not? Why the congressmen did not protect the people in that area?
Well, you'll have to ask them individually. I can tell you this, Dr. Tillawi, that I believe that if, for example, Senator Hillary Clinton of New York had her vote to do over again, she would not have voted in favor of the war. She would not have voted with a majority of her constituents. That if Senator John Kerry could have his vote back, he probably would not have voted with a majority of his constituents, even though they are constituents in two of the most liberal Democrat or progressive Democrat states in the country. And that's why we have to, when we go back and we examine that vote, we have to put ourselves in that position at that time when America was still reeling from 9/11. They believed that there was the potential for greater harm as a result of the president's discussion with the American people and the media's coverage of it. They believed that mushroom cloud over a major metropolitan area was a major possibility.
Which was a lie.
Unfortunately.
Which was a lie.
Pardon? Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now let's get to the theme of your book, which is we really did not go there for any other reason than to remove Saddam Hussein from power, because the leaders at that time, and you name few names like Wolfowitz and Fieth and Wurmser, you name the right people there. Tell us, why did we go to Iraq, or why did the country go to Iraq?
Well, we went to Iraq, Dr. Tillawi, for things that, for the same reasons that nations have been dragged into war for hundreds of years. And the reason I say that is the title of my book is actually taken from the writings of John Jay, the first Supreme Court Chief Justice, one of the writers of what we know today as the Federalist Papers. In Federalist Paper number 4, John Jay wrote that monarchs will take their nations to war when they are to get nothing by it, but for purposes, personal purposes, such as revenge for a personal affront or to support the ideals of partisans. And those were the two reasons that we went to war. First of all, we had a commander-in-chief that, before he came into office, had a reason for wanting to remove Saddam Hussein from power, and quite honestly, to bring him to the justice that he ultimately received in an Iraqi court. And secondly, there were placed in the Pentagon individuals or partisans, you might say, who had a desire, a very well-publicized, well-documented, very public desire to remove Saddam Hussein from power. Those people were, as you mentioned, Paul Wolfowitz, Doug Fieth, Dave Wurmser, Abram Shulsky, and others.
Which are the same people who wrote a document that you refer to, which is the Securing the Realm. Tell me about that.
Right. A document that was the result of what they referred to as a discussion group that included Doug Fieth and David Wurmser, And in 1996, when Benjamin Netanyahu came to power in Israel, this document was published as a means by which Benjamin Netanyahu and his new government could secure the physical and economic security of Israel. And it was referred to as securing the realm. That was in 1996.
Which is the clean break document.
Yes, clean break, a strategy for securing the realm. And that was followed up by an open letter to President Clinton in 1998, signed by Paul Wolfowitz, Doug Fieth, David Wurmser, Bill Kristol, as well as Donald Rumsfeld and others, that said that President Clinton should take part in removing Saddam Hussein from power. And once again, this is a leader very clearly spoken of in a clean break strategy for securing the realm, as well as an open letter to the president in 1998, signed by over 30 public policy figures. David Wurmser wrote a book regarding the mistake that took place, in his opinion, in Operation Desert Storm, when they did not remove Saddam Hussein from power. So these folks had a very well-documented, very public desire to remove a person from power, namely Saddam Hussein. And when George Bush came to power in January of 2001, with his personal animus towards Saddam Hussein, he was able to find individuals that would deal with the intelligence and the intelligence analysis in the Pentagon that had a very like-minded opinion on the future of Saddam Hussein, on what should be the future of Saddam Hussein. And so those two reasons that John Jay mentioned over 200 years ago played out in March of 2003 when the United States invaded Iraq. These very old motivations of revenge for personal affront on the part of the commander-in-chief, and then the supporting of ideals of partisans on the part of the so-called neocons in the Pentagon.
Now,
and so,
Congressman, just if I might, the names you have named and the people you have talked about, and you said like-minded people who became in these sensitive positions, and you named the clean break document, and also, let me add to that, the defense guidance plan that Wolfowitz and Perle had written back in 1992, and add to that the Project for New American Century. And these same names have been popping up every time we talk about all these three documents, and then the same names are popping up again when we talk about the first Bush administration. Now, there is a common link between all these peoples. If we're saying Paul Wolfowitz, Douglas Fieth, Wurmser, Scooter Libby, who became the very much the chief of staff for the vice president, Joshua Bolten, who was the chief staff for the Bush administration, Richard Perle, who was at the State Department. Actually, Wolfowitz was the State Department, and Richard Perle was on the board of National Security. All these people, there's a common link between them and also between all these three documents. Didn't this ring a bell somewhere in Washington that why these people who like-minded, and they all happen to be Jewish, not to have anything against Jewish, didn't anyone think, okay, the clean break document in '96 was written as a guide for Netanyahu to break the clean break and to remove Saddam, as that document actually stated, that removing Saddam Hussein from power is an Israeli objective in its own right. And then we find these people in the Bush administration. This whole thing didn't ring a bell with somebody?
Well, it didn't. And the reason I can say that, Dr. Tillawi, is it did not ring a bell with me before, because we were, once again, you've got to take yourself back to that time as a member of Congress. What you are being shown are aluminum tubes. You're being told about reports by the IAEA and the weapons inspectors about stockpiles that have not been destroyed. The focus was the program of weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein had, and that was the total focus of everyone involved. It was not a link between 9/11 and Saddam Hussein. I talk about that quite in depth in my book and go through the reason why that was not the primary motivation for what Congress was dealing with at that time, and the president was talking about. Even though in his public speeches he would talk about the two things, we were focused on weapons of mass destruction, and I can only tell you that at that time, what I was confronted with was not a mushroom cloud in my mind, but a cloud of confusion, because I can tell you that the intelligence was just not there. Now, there was intelligence that said, these people have told us this, and these people have told us this. But you have to go beyond that, and I went beyond that to ask, what are our people, what are our assets informing us of? And finally, where are they? If we are going to go to war and we are going to commit America's sons and daughters to combat, and we are going to literally be sacrificing life and limb, we have got to know where the justification for that commitment is physically located. We cannot say, well, we think they're there. We've got to know they're there.
Sir, it's really...
And we did not.
It's really scary when what you're saying, it's really scaring me to death to know that our congressmen did not have, they were showing aluminum tubes, so they were lied to, and based on that, supposedly we went to war. That is treason. Who is to protect the American citizens if members of Congress are acting on misinformation? This is treason of the highest degree.
Well, it is. I can tell you this, that I believe that Congress could have asked collectively much tougher questions.
Why they did not? Why they did not? Who was holding a gun to their head and saying you couldn't do this?
Well, quite honestly, 64% of their voters, and I'm taking this from personal experience. I can tell you that after I voted against the leader of my party, the President of the United States, and voted against a plan to go to war with a country that many believed was developing a nuclear weapon to strike the United States, that my constituents were very upset. And most members of Congress do not want to go home to very upset members of the voting bloc. And so,
which is a selfish reason, by the way.
It very much is. And let me just remind you of how this all evolved. When Hillary Clinton voted for the war, she gave a very eloquent speech on the floor of the Senate. Now, I can tell you personally that there was no reason for her to give that speech, because she saw the same intelligence that I saw, and that intelligence was, as I said on the floor of the House of Representatives, tenuous at best. But in early 2007, when she was campaigning for president in New Hampshire, she was able to get by with, if I knew then what I know now, I would have voted against the war. Well, now, the Democrat Party, I guess, to a certain extent, held her to what she had done, and that is make a great error. But I can tell you that in many cases, in the case of Senator Clinton, she knows that she can vote one way one day with 64% of her constituents at least.
Okay.
And then if she's found to be wrong, then she can simply blame it on the intelligence. Once again, the intelligence that informed me that there was not credible evidence for a program of weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
She can blame she can blame the briefers, she can blame the president, but once again, Dr. Tillawi, if that president had not been given authority by the authorization that passed the House on October the 10th and I think passed the Senate on October the 11th, he would not have been able to go to war. If Senator Hillary Clinton, if Senator Charles Schumer, if Senator John Kerry, if Senator Evan Bayh from my state of Indiana, all Democrats, if they would have, because you recall that the majority leader at that time was Tom Daschle, a Democrat, who Tom Daschle was the individual that introduced S.J. Res 23 in the Senate. A Democrat in the Senate introduced that bill. And so, and a majority of Democrats in the Senate voted for that resolution.
Okay.
And so, because she knows that she can go one day and vote a certain way, and then go the next day and say, if I knew then what I know now, I would have voted differently. That's what can happen in our day and age.
Okay. All right, Congressman, we are going to watch a little clip, about 4 minutes, of actually some of the speeches that took place on that day. We're going to show what Senator McCain's position was, and we have a clip also from Senator Obama, even though he was not a senator at that time. And then at the end of the clip, we're going to see an ad that you had ran while campaigning. So let's go to the clip.
Whether to assume history's burden and make the world safe from a megalomaniacal tyrant whose cruelty and offense to the norms of civilization are infamous, or whether to wait for this man, armed with the world's worst weapons and willing and able to use them to make history for us. It's a question of whether preemptive action to defeat an adversary whose designs would imperil our vital interests is not only appropriate but moral, and whether our morality and security give us cause to fire the first shot in this battle. The government of Saddam Hussein is a clear and present danger to the United States of America. Would that he would be just another Arab dictator pumping oil and repressing his people, but satisfied with his personal circumstances within the confines of his country's borders. That situation alone would offend our sense of justice and compel us to militate for a regime change, but by means short of preemptive military action. But Saddam Hussein has shown he has greater ambitions. His ambitions lie not in Baghdad or Tikrit or Basra, but in the deserts of Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Saddam has masterfully manipulated the international weapons inspections regime over the course of a decade, enabling him to remain in power with his weapons of mass destruction intact and growing in lethality. He knows how to play for time and how to exploit divisions within the international community, greased by the prospect of oil contracts for friendly foreign powers. His calculated ambiguity about his willingness to accept a new inspections regime are intended to stave off military attack until such time as he is able to deter it through deployment of an Iraqi nuclear weapon. He is using opponents of war in America, including well-intentioned individuals who honestly believe inspections represent an alternative to war, to advance his own ends, sowing divisions within our ranks that encourage reasonable people to believe he may be sincere. He is not. He's had 10 years to prove otherwise, and he has transparently failed. His regime would be secure if he would only acquiesce to the international community's demands to disarm. He has not. It is Saddam Hussein who puts his own regime at risk by developing these weapons. The burden is not on America to justify going to war. The burden is Saddam Hussein's to justify why his regime should continue to exist as long as its continuing existence threatens the world. Giving peace a chance only gives Saddam Hussein more time to prepare for war on his terms at a time of his choosing in pursuit of ambitions that will only grow as his power to achieve them grows. It's a safe assumption that Iraqis will be grateful to whoever is responsible for securing their freedom.
I don't oppose war in all circumstances, and when I look out over this crowd today, I know there is no shortage of patriots or patriotism. What I do oppose is a dumb war.
Us rushing headlong into a war unilaterally was a mistake and may still be a mistake. If it has happened, then at that point what the debate's really going to be about is what's our long-term commitment there? How much is it going to cost? What does it mean for us to rebuild Iraq? How do we stabilize and make sure that this country doesn't splinter into factions between the Shias and the Kurds and the Sunnis?
I've looked at the evidence. I'm a hawk when it comes to defeating terrorism. I was strongly supportive of Afghanistan. I would have picked up arms myself to prevent 9/11 again. I don't think the president has made the case on Iraq because I don't see weapons.
You said this before.
I said this in October of 2002, 6 months before the war was launched.
If you had been a member of the Senate, you would have voted against the resolution.
Yes.
In October 2002, when America was clamoring to go to war in Iraq, I voted against sending America's sons and daughters into harm's way because the intelligence did not support the claim that there were weapons of mass destruction there. It wasn't a popular vote, especially with members of my own party. In fact, it can get lonely when you take a stand. But my mom and dad taught me that you don't restore trust by doing the popular thing, you do it by doing the right thing. I'm Congressman John Hostettler, and I approve this message, and I think they would have too.
Congressman, I want to thank you for taking that stand from the beginning. Now, my question after we heard that, was Senator McCain lying to the people in the United States on that day from the Senate floor? You heard what he said on that day. Was he lying to us?
I can tell you, Dr. Tillawi, that if you took what was delivered to members of Congress on face value from the administration, if not the briefers from the intelligence community, the Central Intelligence Agency, the State Department Intelligence Arm, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and others, if you took what people like George Tenet, who told the president himself that it's a slam dunk, if you took what people like Condoleezza Rice, the National Security Advisor, were telling, if you took even ultimately what Colin Powell, Secretary of State, said before the United Nations, if you took all of those things that the political leadership of the administration was saying, you would be echoing Senator McCain's floor speech.
But Congressman, Congressman, you are opening up for us tonight a very dark window on our congressmen and our politicians that a senator like McCain could not see it the way you saw it at that time, and now we are talking about Senator McCain becoming the President of the United States. Whose intelligence is he going to rely on?
Well, as Commander-in-Chief and as the sole member of the Article 2 branch of the government, meaning the Article 2 of the United States Constitution only speaks to two constitutional officers, and that is the President and the Vice President. And the President is the Commander-in-Chief, and so he will assess intelligence according to his own will. And that is not necessarily.
But Senator McCain had the same intelligence that President Bush had. That you yourself saying it was bad intelligence. There was no reading. You don't know where these people were reading, what they were reading in that intelligence. And now if he's the sole decider, it's scary.
Well, and let me just make it a little scarier for you, Dr. Tillawi. You played several clips of what an Illinois state senator thought about the war in Iraq, and he was pitched what we would call a softball, a very slow-pitched softball by that reporter. I don't know who the reporter was, but the reporter asked him if he would have been in the United States Senate at that time when two-thirds of Americans were clamoring for war with Saddam Hussein. We are to believe that he would have voted differently than every other member of the Senate who ran for the presidency in 2008. He would have voted differently than Chris Dodd, Joseph Biden, Evan Bayh at one point, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, John Edwards. Now, if America is willing to believe that, then you've got to understand why America is willing to believe 13 months after the greatest loss of life on our shores since December 7th, 1941, that they're willing to believe that Iraq is the danger to America, more so than Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. If America is willing to believe that Barack Obama was willing to do that which none of his compatriots in the Senate who ran for president in 2008 was willing to do, then you have got to understand that's the situation that we were in October of 2002, when America was willing to believe that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
The question that kind of pops up here is, who is running the country? I mean, it looks like it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. Somebody is running the country. Who's that entity?
Well, that entity, I can, from my personal experience, in October of 2002, with an election less than a month away, the American people were led to believe by the president, because of his motivations that I talk about in my book, as a result of the intelligence that was proffered and brought to the American people as a result of the people in the Pentagon, which I mentioned in my book, as well as you mentioned, the media, and including people that gave very eloquent speeches, such as Senator McCain and Senator Clinton on the floor of the Senate. They were led to believe by a host of people that there were weapons of mass destruction under the program, an elaborate program.
And you are satisfied that that's exactly what was the case, or there was something else? Are you satisfied with what you're telling me, that that was the case? They were just given bad intelligence, that there was no other pressures to go that way?
No, once again, Dr. Tillawi, I will not use the phrase bad intelligence. When intelligence agencies are told that, for example, the comrades of Ahmed Shalabi have certain information about a program of weapons of mass destruction, that is intelligence that has to be examined. Now, on its very not very far below the surface, you can learn that we don't know where those weapons of mass destruction are. We don't have any hard evidence about their presence there, and so it's, once again, it's tenuous at best. But if all you do is take on surface what all of these entities are telling you, then you're going to be led by the likes of Ahmed Shalabi, George W. Bush, Doug Fieth, and Hillary Clinton, and that is the reason that I wrote this book. That ultimately the American people have got to put in the hands of their representatives that they trust the power to do that which even a vast majority of the American people do not believe is the correct thing to do.
Congressman,
and yes.
Let me ask you this. Do you, in your book, do you mention AIPAC or the influence that it has on our elected representatives, and what AIPAC's role was in taking the country in a war that was not in the best interest of the country?
Well, I don't mention AIPAC, Dr. Tillawi. I did not, in my 12 years as a member of the House of Representatives, have very much encounter with AIPAC at all. I do mention a briefing that Benjamin Netanyahu gave to the House, and let me just briefly go in that direction, if you will.
Sure.
Today, if you go back to the time when we were determining that there were no weapons of mass destruction, numerous weapons search teams were sent into Iraq after we acquired virtual overall control of the country. And I talk about a couple of these search teams in my book. They went all over the country, and they could not find a trace of a program of weapons of mass destruction. And it was brought up that they had been carted away to Syria. Well, I don't know where that very illogical, inane topic came from, where that suggestion came from. But it would have been an ideal time, given even in 2004, that the American people supported this foray into Iraq. It would have been a perfect time for the United States military to enter Syria under the guise of trying to find weapons of mass destruction and removing that regime from power. We did not. And I can tell you that I believe that the people who wrote A Clean Break would have loved for that to happen. But that didn't happen. Likewise, today we're talking about, and we've held talks in Geneva with Iran, high-level diplomatic talks, something that I am sure the writers of A Clean Break, the open letter to the president, and others disdain the idea of meeting with Iranian officials to talk about nuclear program. So, and if you look at Paul Wolfowitz's departure, Doug Fieth's departure from the Pentagon, Richard Perle's testimony before Congress that we should have gotten out after Baghdad fell, you can see underlying all of this that the people that took us to war in Iraq wanted us to go further, but the commander-in-chief did not do so because, quite honestly, he had gotten out of Iraq what he wanted out of Iraq. His desire was not to regime change Syria militarily, which he could have done with support of the American people by telling the American people Saddam's weapons of mass destruction are in Syria. He did not do that. And today he is not militarily confronting Iran, as many, such as the neocons, are talking about all the time on television.
Okay.
And once again, Doug Fieth left, Paul Wolfowitz left, all of these people left when they realized, or after they realized...
But they left after the objective was already accomplished, which is the removal of Saddam Hussein from power, right?
And that, yes, and that objective was the objective that the President of the United States was thinking about on January 20th, 2001 at his inauguration.
Okay, but also that is the same objective that was in the Clean Break document,
yes.
Securing the realm. And so what it boils down to, Congressman, is we went and removed Saddam from power as an Israeli objective in its own right, as it was stated in that document.
Well, there was definitely two parties that had a common goal. And the removal of Saddam Hussein from power achieved that common goal.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm looking at these people. They're not here anymore. We are stuck in a quagmire in Iraq. And these people who took us there, they're not even nowhere to be found on the scene because they accomplished what they sought after. Tell you what, Congressman, if you would stay with me, we're going to go to the phones. And we have Vic on line 1. Vic, go ahead. Very quick.
Tillawi, I want to congratulate the Congressman for taking a stand against the war. But I want to ask also, wasn't Congresswoman Barbara Lee one of the first ones to object to the war, and also Congresswoman McKinney? My second question is, the man out there, the prosecutor from Los Angeles wrote the book, the prosecution of George Bush for murder. I wanted to know if the Congressman has read the book, and it was on the New York Times bestseller list, and does he have an opinion on that book?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Vic.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure about Congresswoman Lee and McKinney. I would assume Congresswoman Lee actually voted against the resolution to go to war against the Taliban that was passed on September 14th. She was the only member of the House of Representatives, actually the only member of both chambers to vote against that resolution. So it would not surprise me if she had voted against the Iraq War resolution as well. Congresswoman McKinney, I'm not sure about how she voted on the Iraq War resolution. With regard to the book written by the former prosecutor from, I think, Los Angeles,
right.
There's one snag that I think. I'm not an attorney. I'm an engineer by training. But constitutionally speaking, I think he runs into the problem in that it's not murder if it is allowed by law. And the reason I say that is because the Iraq War resolution gave authority to the president to essentially declare war on Iraq. And unless the prosecutor is going to take the Congress to court in abrogating its duty to declare war under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, he'll have, in my opinion, I think he would have a very difficult case to suggest, not that, to suggest that George Bush did something unlawful. H.J. Res 114, I think it was, and S.J. Res 23 gave lawful authority to the President of the United States to go to war against Iraq. And I think it would be difficult to argue a case that something that is given the force of law is an illegal act.
Okay. We don't have a lot of time left, but I want to know what John Hostettler think the future of America will be, let's say, in the next 5 to 10 years. How does it look like?
I think that we could go in several directions. I think history informs us that we are coming out of a very unpopular war. The party
are we coming out though? Are we coming out?
Well, what I'm saying is, let me say this. Politically speaking, the party in power that put us into war is the party and the president. The party is going to change, and the war is very unpopular. So if you liken this back to the 1970s, when we got out of a very unpopular war, and America wanted to deal with war no more, you might say, we turned to a very liberal governor from the state, former governor from the state of Georgia. And he took us in a direction whereby we stopped paying attention to our military. We stopped paying attention to foreign affairs. We took a very dovish approach, and the Iranian embassy was taken over. The Shah was removed from power. Russia invaded, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. And he, as commander-in-chief, was powerless to command U.S. foreign policy. And as a result of that, Ronald Reagan became president. I think that we are in the process of going through very tumultuous times as the result of the American people losing faith in the government and wanting to radically change the leadership in our government.
Congressman, we only have less than a minute left. Tell our viewers how they can get a copy of your book.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tillawi. You can acquire a copy of the book by going to the website nothingforthenation.com and clicking on the button to purchase a copy of the book. It's Nothing for the Nation, Who Got What Out of Iraq, and you can acquire it by going to nothingforthenation.com.
Are you personally signing the book for people who order it?
I can if they
request
ask,
it.
I can do that. I sure.
Very good.
I sure can do that.
I will go on that website and I will ask you to sign a copy for me. Congressman, I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming on the program as we are completely out of time. Thank you again, sir, for coming on.
Thank you, Dr. Tillawi, for inviting me.
Thanks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next Thursday. It was an excellent program. Good night. See you then.